Hi, I'm Nick Copwood from the University of Technology, Sydney. Welcome to this, the second of 4 videos on academic journal publishing. If you haven't watched the previous one, I suggest you do watch that one first. This one is all about issues to do with copyright, open access, and who pays at what point in the process to read a journal article.
So now we move on to the second in the 4 series of videos. This one is about copyright, open access, and who pays for what. Now, it's easy to think about these things in terms of open versus closed access. The closed one is a historically dominant one. Somebody, the reader, has to pay. That used to be perhaps a library subscribing to a journal, hard copies coming into the shelves. It could have been perhaps as a member of a professional association where part of your membership means you receive a hard copy of the journal. These days it's not only hard copies you have to pay for, but digital copies too. You might find a journal article you want to read, you can read the abstract, but if you want to download the full PDF, it asks you to pay. Or you might have to log in via your institutional library, and if they've got a license with a publisher, then a whole bunch of journals, the content will be freely available. But the library's paid for that, or the university has. So this is seen as locking up knowledge for a privileged few, and it's seen as controversial because often publicly funded research is ultimately paid for by taxpayers. So why should somebody who's paid for the research pay again to read the outcomes? In contrast to this, we have open access. And the idea of that is that anybody with an internet connection can access that material anytime. There's no paying twice, paying for the research in the first place and then paying again to read it. And there is an idea that open access supports global equality of access. So institutions which aren't able to afford big site licenses for all the content for, say, Springer or Elsevier, open access makes that available, all our content available to people regardless of their ability to pay or their institution's ability to pay. I don't think it's quite this simple anymore. Certainly there are still articles that remain behind paywalls, and there are articles that are freely available to everybody permanently, but there are lots of different shades in between this now. For example, in a recent publication I did with Elsevier, it gave me a link automatically when a publication first came online and said for 50 days, anybody can download this for free, unlimited number of downloads for 50 days. So that's open access in a temporarily limited way. A Taylor and Francis journal I published with offered a link with a limited number of downloads. So that didn't expire over time, a different number of people could, a set number of people could download it. Taylor and Francis also have a STAR program, and other publishers have similar things, where they offer a limited number of days of free access to particular students from low-income countries. And as well, even with a paper where the PDF, all formatted nicely by the publisher, is behind a paywall, the Sherpa system, which I mentioned before in video 1, might mean that a version of it, say a Word version of the accepted manuscript, might be available freely to everybody through an institutional repository. So it's not just a 1 or a 0 of free to everybody or everybody has to pay. There are now lots of variations on what access looks like. So what does this mean for you? Well, firstly, that you have to do your homework and not be stung by a publishing fee or surprised by the cost of open access. You might submit to a journal where it's free to submit and to publish, but if you want the paper to be open access, you might be charged $3,000. Equally, you might be submitting for an open access journal, but surprised to find that you have to pay a $350 administration or publishing fee. It also means that you have to manage your copyright very carefully. Use the Sherpa system, getting help from your library so that you don't break the copyright agreements with the publishers. And particularly being careful about how you use something like ResearchGate. Whilst you might see lots of other people uploading PDFs of copyrighted articles onto ResearchGate, I wouldn't recommend it. Firstly, you're breaking the copyright with the publishers most likely, but you might also be infringing your employers or your university, if you're a student's code of practice as a researcher. Now remember, at the end of the day, usually or nearly always, somebody pays for a journal article at some point, whether it's the university paying the researchers to do the research in the first place, and often in commercial publishing, of course, somebody is making money. So we have to be careful that we don't undermine this model. I put a little note at the bottom there that it's because of the complexities around this, it's important not to be naive and think that paywalls are inherently unfair and open access is going to solve all our problems.
Thank you for watching this second video. The third video will be about issues to do with the status of journals, how we measure how good they are, impact factors, altmetrics, and all sorts. Hope to see you there.